Hey, 6th grade, we're going to go ahead and get started on the third section of Chapter 9. So I had some space at the bottom of the last page that I worked on. So I just did a divider line and I put Chapter 9, Section 3, sample space, that's the title of the section, and I put today's date off in the corner. So before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and define what sample space is. So this is going to be our one little bit of vocab. So a sample space is the collection of all possible outcomes. Alright, so if I'm flipping a coin, my sample space would be the different things I could get when I flip that coin. Well, I could get heads or I could get tails. Sometimes it can be a little more complicated than that, like the first one that we're going to see. So I'm just going to scooch down here. You do need some space for this one. So I've got I've got about like 10 lines here. If you have less than that, you might want to go to a new page. Alright, so I'm going to put a number 1. And we are going to pretend that we are rolling 2 dice. And we are going to list all of the possible outcomes. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to be very neat and organized about this. Going down the side here, I'm going to write all of the things that I could get when I rolled the first dice. Well, I could get, first die, that's singular. When I roll the first die, I can get anything from 1 to 6. So I'm going to write that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I can also get the same thing when I roll the second one. I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Alright, so if I roll both of them, I could get a 1 and a 1. I could get a 1 and a 2, a 1 and a 3, a 1 and a 4, a 1 and a 5, or a 1 and a 6. So this is like first die, second die. I could roll a 2 first and then get a 1 on the second one, a 2 and a 2 on the other one, a 2 and then a 3, a 2 and then a 4, a 2 and then a 5, a 2 and then a 6. You're starting to see the idea. So I'm going to actually pause and I'm going to fill in the rest of these. You can do the same as well, and I'll pick back up with this in just a moment after I'm done. Alright, so I have written all of mine out. So these are all of the possible outcomes that I could get by rolling just 2 dice. So because we're neat and organized about it, we can easily figure out how many outcomes that we have. Well, we've got 6 by 6, so that means, when I multiply that, I have 36 outcomes. Alright, so if I wanted to find the theoretical probability of getting, let's do a couple of these. I'm going to flip over to the back. We're going to have to flip back and forth between that one because I didn't have enough space, but that's okay. Let's say I wanted to know the probability of getting at least 1, 3. So when I roll the die, when I roll both dice, I want to see if I get at least 1, 3. Well, let's go back and we'll see which ones we have that have at least 1, 3. Well, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so 11 of these outcomes give me at least 1, 3. So that's going to be 11 out of the 36 possible outcomes. What if I wanted to know the possibility of, let's see, no 5s? So if I wanted no 5s on any of my rolls, let's see. Well, I'm actually going to count the 5s, and I'll subtract from 36. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh yeah, it would be the same as my 3s. Right, except instead of 3s, it's 5s. So it would be 11 if I wanted 5s, but I don't want 5s. So 36 minus 11, so that would be 25 out of 36. So odds are better for this one for not getting 5s. What if I wanted to know the probability of getting doubles? So I want to know like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Let's see what our probability is for that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so there are 6 outcomes that give me doubles. So that's 6 out of 36, which when I reduce gives me 1 6. So I have a 1 in 6 chance of getting doubles on that. Alright, so that's how you make a sample space with kind of like a grid. Next we're going to take a look at how to make a sample space. Let me just move this down. How to make a sample space with something called a tree diagram. So go ahead and put a number 2. And there were some cutouts that I posted for you. Hang on, let me grab it. Come here. Alright, the 1 should look like this. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that in. I'm going to pause the video while I do that. Alright, so I have mine glued in. So this is just another way to find how many total possible outcomes do we have. So let's see. Suppose you're going to travel on a river. You have 2 choices of boats, a kayak or a rowboat. Alright, so I'm going to write those, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of room when I do this. So I'm going to write kayak and rowboat. Alright. You can go upstream on 3 smaller streams to the north, northwest, and northeast. So this is how it looks like a tree diagram. I'm going to kind of branch off from here. So we've got north, northwest, and whoops, I can't spell, northeast. And same here, we could go in a rowboat north, northwest, or northeast. So we've got kayak north, kayak northwest, kayak northeast, rowboat north, rowboat northwest, rowboat northeast. So we've got 6 choices. So if I was going to select one of these at random, what's the possibility that I would get rowboat northwest? So, sorry, not possibility, probability of rowboat northwest. Well, that's 1 possible outcome that I'm looking for, because none of the other ones are rowboat and northwest, out of 6 possible outcomes. Okay, what if I added a direction? Maybe there's another stream. What if you could also go west? Let's say you could do that. Well, we would have to add on. I would add on yet another branch to my choices here. So now how many possible outcomes do we have? Now we've got 8. We have 8 possible outcomes. So let's say, you don't call that A, we'll call this B. What if I wanted to know the probability of randomly picking any choice that takes me west? Well, that would be 2 out of the possible 8. So that would be a 1/4 chance. Alright, now, the next thing we're going to take a look at is something called the counting principle. And I think you guys have actually done something on IXL that had to do with this. Not for certain, but at any rate, we're going to take a look at it right now. So this is something called the counting principle. All right, and the counting principle says if there are m ways, so some number of ways of making one choice, and n ways to make a second choice, then there are m times n possibilities. So for example, let's take a look at the examples that we did here. In the first one, I'm actually going to flip back real quick. Okay, there were 6 possibilities for the first die, 6 possibilities for the second die. Well, we've got 6 and 6. So 6 times 6, that gave us our 36 possible outcomes. In the one that we did up here, we had, 2 choices for boat, and originally 3 choices for direction. 2 times 3 gave us our 6 original possibilities. Okay? That one's pretty simple. We're going to take a look at an example of that, and we're going to put in that cutout that I had for you, if you want to just label this with an A. And where did I put that? Is that it? Yep. Looks like this. You're going to go ahead and glue that in. I'm going to pause and do that right now. Alright, I have mine glued in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to see how many possible outcomes we have for making a sandwich at this particular deli counter. So first thing I'm going to do is, I'm just going to put a 1 right here. I'm going to keep track of this. Let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kinds of bread for choice 1. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 choices of meat, which means I have 30 possible combinations. What if I wanted to add another kind of meat? Let's say I wanted to add chicken onto the bottom here. Well, I'd still have the 5 kinds of bread, but now 7 kinds of meat, which means I'd have 35 possible outcomes. Let's say, no, never mind. I don't want to add chicken. I'm going to add a different kind of bread. I'm going to add pumpernickel. I'm going to add pumpernickel to my types of bread. So that means, well, now I have 6 kinds of bread and 6 kinds of meat, which means I would have 36 possible outcomes. So I guess if this deli owner, if he wants to get the greatest number of outcomes with just 1 change, he would just have to add, another type of bread, and that would give him 6 additional possible outcomes. Alright, so what you're going to do now is you're going to hop on over to IXL and practice these skills there.